I've always been a night owl, so when I landed a job as a morgue attendant working the graveyard shift, I thought it would be a perfect fit. Little did I know, the morgue held secrets darker than the night itself. The first few nights were uneventful. I spent my time cataloging bodies, cleaning equipment, and occasionally chatting with the security guards stationed nearby. But as the days stretched into weeks, strange things began to happen. It started with small things, a chill in the air, shadows moving where they shouldn't be. I brushed it off as my imagination playing tricks on me, until one night I heard it. A soft whisper echoing through the empty halls. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I strained to listen. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, until it felt like it was coming from right behind me. I turned, but there was nobody there, just the rows of cold, silent bodies lying on their slabs. Terrified, I tried to shake off the feeling and focus on my work, but the whispers persisted, growing louder and more menacing with each passing night. I started to avoid certain areas of the morgue, afraid of what I might find lurking in the darkness. One night, as I was finishing up my shift, I heard a door creak open somewhere in the distance. My blood ran cold as I realized it was coming from the freezer room, the room where we stored the bodies awaiting autopsy. I hesitated, torn between my duty and my fear, but curiosity got the better of me, and I slowly made my way towards the source of the sound. The door was slightly ajar, and a sliver of light spilled out into the hallway. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. What I saw chilled me to the bone. A figure, hunched over one of the tables, its back turned to me. It was whispering, its voice low and guttural, as it traced intricate patterns on the body lying before it. I stood there, paralyzed with fear, unable to move or look away. The figure seemed to sense my presence and slowly turned its head to look at me. Its eyes gleamed in the dim light, cold and empty, sending shivers down my spine. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body refused to obey. I was rooted to the spot, trapped in the gaze of this sinister apparition. And as it advanced towards me, its outstretched hand reaching for my throat, I knew that I was in the presence of something truly malevolent. I don't remember much after that, just flashes of darkness and the distant sound of my own screams. When I finally regained consciousness, I was lying on the floor of the morgue, the freezer room door hanging open beside me. I stumbled to my feet, my heart racing as I fled the morgue, never looking back. I quit my job the next day, unable to shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me like a suffocating blanket. And though I've tried to put that night behind me, the memory of what I saw in the morgue will haunt me forever. As a morgue attendant, I thought I had seen it all, until the night I encountered the missing body. It started like any other shift. I arrived at the morgue, prepared to spend another long night cataloging bodies and preparing them for autopsy. But as I made my rounds, I noticed that one of the drawers in the freezer room was empty. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a clerical error, or a mix-up with the paperwork. But when I checked the records, I found nothing. No mention of the missing body, no indication of where it had gone. I searched the morgue from top to bottom, desperate to find any trace of the missing corpse, but it was as if it had vanished into thin air. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, that there was more to this disappearance than met the eye. As the night wore on, my anxiety grew, fueled by the eerie silence of the morgue and the sense of unease that hung in the air like a heavy fog. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that someone, or something, was lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. I tried to push aside my fears and focus on my work, but every noise made me jump. Every shadow seemed to dance with a life of its own. And then, just as I was about to give up hope, I heard it. A soft, muffled sound coming from one of the empty drawers. Heart pounding, I approached the source of the noise and slowly pulled open the drawer. What I saw inside made my blood run cold. The missing body, lying motionless on the cold metal table. I stumbled back, my mind reeling with fear and confusion. How had the body gotten there? And more importantly, who or what had put it there? I knew I had to get out of there, to leave the morgue and never look back. But as I turned to flee, I felt a cold hand close around my wrist, pulling me back with a strength that defied explanation. I screamed, struggling against the unseen force that held me in its grasp, but it was no use. I was trapped, at the mercy of whatever malevolent entity had taken up residence in the morgue. And as I stared into the lifeless eyes of the missing body, I knew that I was in the presence of something truly sinister, something that had no intention of letting me leave alive. The hours dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity as I fought against the unseen force that held me captive in the morgue. I tried to call for help, to reach out to anyone who might be able to save me, but my cries fell on deaf ears. As dawn approached, the cold grip around my wrist loosened and I stumbled to my feet, gasping for breath as I fled the morgue, my heart pounding in my chest. I never looked back, but the memory of that night and the terror that accompanied it will haunt me for the rest of my days. Working in a morgue, you get used to the cold. It's just part of the job. But there was something different about the chill that permeated the air that night, something that sent shivers down my spine. It started innocently enough. I was going about my duties, cataloging bodies and preparing them for storage, when I noticed a strange sensation creeping over me. A feeling of being watched, of being followed wherever I went. I tried to shake off the feeling, to focus on my work, and ignore the creeping sense of dread that had settled over me like a suffocating blanket. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As the night wore on, the chill in the air grew more intense, until it felt like I was standing in the heart of a blizzard. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to ward off the cold, but it was no use. It seeped into my bones, freezing me from the inside out. And then, just as I was about to give in to despair, I heard it. A soft, mournful wail echoing through the empty halls of the morgue. I froze, my blood turning to ice in my veins, as the sound grew louder and more insistent. I knew I should run, to flee the morgue and never look back. But something compelled me to investigate, to find out what was causing the eerie wailing that echoed through the halls like a ghostly lament. Heart pounding, I followed the sound, my footsteps echoing off the cold, tiled floors. It led me to the cold storage room where the temperature dropped even further, until it felt like I was standing in the depths of winter itself. The wailing grew louder as I approached, filling the room with a sense of sorrow and despair. And then, as I reached the source of the sound, I saw her. A young woman, her body lying on one of the tables, her face contorted in agony. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized what had happened. This poor soul had been left here to die, forgotten by the world and condemned to spend eternity trapped in the icy embrace of the morgue. Hours passed as I stood there, transfixed by the sight before me, unable to tear my eyes away from the tragic figure lying on the table. And then, just as dawn began to break, I knew I had to leave, to get out of the morgue before it consumed me too. But even now, as I try to put that night behind me, I can still hear the mournful wail echoing in my ears, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk within the cold, silent halls of the morgue.